Emily Carter did not plan for that evening to matter. It arrived like many others, quiet and predictable, wrapped in routine. She finished work late, reheated leftovers, and stood by the kitchen window of her small Portland apartment, watching snow fall in thin, careful lines. The city looked peaceful, almost unreal, as if it were holding its breath. Emily felt something similar inside her. Paused that had lasted too long. For 2 years after her divorce, she had lived carefully. Not sadly, not dramatically, just carefully. She had told herself that calm was enough. She worked, paid her bills, met friends on weekends, and smiled at the right moments. People believed she was strong. Emily believed it too, most days. But strength, she was learning, could also be a quiet hiding place. The divorce had ended without noise. No betrayal, no shouting, no single moment she could point to and say, "That's where it broke." Love had simply thinned out, like air at a high place, until breathing together felt difficult. When it was over, she told herself it was for the best. She told herself she liked being alone. That night, standing with a cold mug in her hands, she felt the truth press closer. She was not unhappy, but she was untouched by her own life. Days passed without leaving marks. She moved through them like someone visiting a city instead of living in it. Her phone buzzed with an email notification. She almost ignored it. Then she read the subject line again. Community Storytelling Workshop Session 1 tonight. She remembered signing up months ago during one of those hopeful moods that faded by morning. She had forgotten it completely. Emily stared at the screen. The sensible choice was to stay home. She was tired. It was cold. Nothing important would happen. That was the argument she had always accepted. Instead, she put on her coat. The decision felt small, almost silly, but it carried a strange weight. As she walked through the snowy streets, her heart beat faster than necessary. She told herself she was only going to listen. No talking. No sharing. Just observe, then leave. The library room was warm and softly lit. Folding chairs formed a loose circle. A few people sat quietly, holding notebooks, looking unsure. Emily chose a seat near the back. She liked being invisible. It gave her control. The facilitator welcomed everyone and invited volunteers to read. Emily lowered her eyes, relieved she would not be called on. One by one, people shared short pieces, memories, thoughts, moments frozen in time. Some were nervous. Some were confident. All were trying. Then a man stood up from the opposite side of the room. His name, he said, was Daniel Brooks. Daniel's voice was steady, not loud, not careful either. He read about leaving Toronto after a long marriage ended. He spoke of arriving in Seattle with boxes and silence, of learning how empty rooms sounded at night. He did not ask for sympathy. He simply told the truth, plain and unpolished. Emily listened closely. The room felt different, as if everyone had leaned in at the same time. Daniel did not dramatize his pain. He respected it. When he finished, there was a brief, full silence before applause began. Emily felt something move inside her, quick and unexpected. It was not desire. It was recognition. When the session ended, people stood and talked in small groups. Emily told herself to leave. She stood up, put on her coat, and walked toward the door. Then she heard Daniel laugh softly behind her. She turned without thinking. He was folding his paper carefully, as if the story deserved to be treated gently even after being spoken. That was honest, Emily said, surprising herself with how easily the words came out. Daniel looked up, a little startled, then smiled. "Thank you. Honesty feels safer when you don't know who's listening." They talked near the door at first, about writing, about why people come to workshops like this. Daniel mentioned he had moved recently. Emily said she had lived in Portland for years, but still felt like she was passing through. Their conversation flowed without effort. There was no pressure to impress, no hidden performance, just two people exchanging thoughts as if time were not watching. Outside, the snow had slowed. Daniel nodded toward the coffee shop across the street. "Do you want to continue the conversation?" He asked. "Only if you want to." Emily hesitated. She felt the familiar pull of retreat. She knew how to end things politely, how to walk away before expectations formed. That skill had kept her safe for a long time, but safety suddenly felt heavy. "Yes," she said. The coffee shop was nearly empty. They sat by the window, cups steaming between them. They talked about work, about books that stayed with you longer than expected, about cities that changed you quietly. Daniel spoke about rebuilding his life without bitterness. Emily listened more than she spoke, but she did not feel small doing so, for the first time in a long while. She was fully present. When they finally stood to leave, Daniel said, "I'm glad you came tonight." Emily walked home slowly, the cold no longer biting. Her mind replayed the evening, not obsessively, but carefully, as if she were studying a map. She did not imagine a future. She did not make promises to herself. She only acknowledged the truth. Something had begun, not loudly, not dramatically, but clearly enough to be felt. And as she turned the key to her apartment door, Emily understood that choosing to try even once had already changed the shape of her night. She slept deeply, unaware that this single decision would ask more of her soon, more honesty, more courage, more life than she had allowed herself in years. Emily did not notice the change at first. It arrived quietly, hiding inside ordinary days. She woke earlier. She paid more attention to small things, the sound of rain, the color of the sky, the way silence felt less heavy. Her life had not changed on the outside, but inside. Something had shifted forward. She and Daniel began meeting after each workshop, sometimes for coffee, sometimes for long walks where the city seemed to listen. They did not rush. There were no labels, no promises spoken too early. Emily liked that. It gave her space to breathe, to feel without pressure. Daniel was steady in a way she had forgotten people could be. He did not push. He did not disappear. He showed up when he said he would. He listened carefully, not to reply, but to understand. Emily found herself speaking more freely than she expected. Words came easier around him, as if she did not need to protect every sentence. They shared pieces of their past in small parts. Daniel spoke about his marriage ending slowly, about learning that silence could hurt as much as anger. Emily spoke about her own divorce with honesty, but without blame. Neither tried to fix the other. They accepted what was shared and let it rest. As weeks passed, Emily noticed something unsettling. She cared. Not in a dramatic way, but enough to feel vulnerable. She caught herself thinking about Daniel during work, wondering what story he was writing, what thought he was holding back. This awareness brought both warmth and fear. She had promised herself not to repeat old patterns. She had promised to stay in control one evening. After a long walk along the river, Daniel stopped and looked at her more seriously than before. "I want to be clear," he said. "I enjoy this. I don't expect anything from you, but I don't want to pretend this doesn't matter to me." Emily felt her chest tighten. Honesty had always scared her more than silence. She looked out at the water, searching for words that would not trap her. "I'm scared," she admitted. "Not of you. Of myself. Of choosing wrong again." Daniel nodded slowly. "Experience teaches us," he said. "But it also asks us to risk being unsure." The sentence followed Emily home that night. A few days later, she received a message from a mutual friend. Her ex-husband had moved on. He was engaged. The news arrived without warning, clean and direct. Emily expected pain. Instead, she felt something else: release. She sat alone in her apartment and realized how long she had been waiting for permission to move forward. How much energy she had spent being careful for someone who was no longer watching. That realization did not erase fear, but it weakened it. Emily began writing again, not for workshops, not for anyone else. She wrote to understand herself. She wrote about restraint, about longing, about the quiet courage it took to choose a different path. Her words felt alive. Honest. Her connection with Daniel deepened naturally. They laughed more. They argued gently about ideas, about books, about what it meant to begin again in middle adulthood. There was attraction, but it was thoughtful, patient, built on respect. Still, Emily hesitated at the edge of something new. She noticed herself pulling back at times, protecting old habits. Daniel noticed too. One evening, sitting across from each other in a small diner, Daniel spoke carefully. "I don't want to rush you," he said, "but I also don't want to pretend I don't hope." Emily looked at him, really looked at him, not as a possibility, not as a risk, but as a person standing honestly in front of her. "I've lived safely for so long," she said. "I forgot that life needs experience to teach us, not avoidance." Daniel waited. He always did. "I want to try," she continued. "Slowly, honestly, even if I get scared." His smile was quiet but full. "That's enough," he said. "That's more than enough." They did not celebrate with big gestures. They walked instead, side by side, letting the city wrap around them. Emily felt lighter, not because fear was gone, but because she was no longer letting it decide for her. Days moved forward with new meaning. There were moments of doubt, moments of uncertainty. Emily did not pretend otherwise. But she also noticed joy returning in small, steady ways. She felt present in her own life again. She learned that trying did not mean losing control. It meant trusting herself to respond, to learn, to grow. On a quiet evening, standing once more at her kitchen window, Emily watched the city lights reflect off wet streets. The ache she once felt was gone, replaced by something open and unfinished. She did not know where the path with Daniel would lead. She did not need to, for the first time. She understood that learning was not something to fear. It was something to live. And with that understanding, Emily stepped fully into the experience she had once avoided, ready to learn whatever life chose to teach her next.